Hello, all you husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends and everybody else. Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. We are super stoked to have you join us this week for our discussion of Morbius. This is going to be a fun discussion. I can tell already. We definitely are looking forward to chatting all about this film starring Jared Leto as the new version of Morbius in this Sony slash Marvel team up. But before we get to our review this week, let me introduce you to my fantastic co-hosts, two people I literally couldn't do the show without. Jim Pugliafico is with us here in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, babe, I'm here ready to talk about Morbius, Dr. Michael Morbius. Uh, or is it? Yeah, I guess it's Dr. Michael Morbius. There's only one other character that had two names in the movie. But yeah, which was confusing enough as it was. Anyway, yeah, I'm ready to talk about this one.
Awesome. Well, I'm super stoked to get into it with you, but also jazzed to have Will Lindis with us on the show this week. Welcome, Will, fresh off of a long day at work, it sounds like. How are you, Will?
Good. It's work convention time here, and normally that means I'm not doing the show because I'm flying here, flying there. But work convention is in my own hometown, so it was nice to be able to leave the convention hall floor, drive home, and then spend the evening chatting with you guys about movies. Like it's a
Mm,
great way to sort of unwind after a long day of like being on.
Yeah.
absolutely agreed. For sure. Well, Jim, Will, really glad to have you here. We got a lot to talk about with Morbius tonight. We're also going to be doing some plugs, folks. We haven't done that in a little while. That's where we like to put some things on your radar that are tripping our trigger, and we hope that they trip yours. So stay tuned for those. Jim, Will, are you guys ready to talk about Morbius?
Yes, let's go.
Yeah, I'm ready to sink my teeth into this one.
All right. For those who may be new to the show or are otherwise unfamiliar with our format, we're going to talk about this film completely spoiler free for probably about 10 minutes before we open up a can of spoilers and get into the meat of our review. So if you haven't seen Morbius yet and you're kind of like, I'm on the fence, I don't know if I want to see it, we will definitely give you our first impressions of the film without stealing your virginal innocence where the plot of the film is concerned. So don't worry, hang with us. If we get to that spoiler part and we give you that big warning that we're gonna open up spoilers and you listen anyway, well, that's on you. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. Anyway, here we go. Our discussion of Morbius. All right. So, Will, of the three of us, you're kind of our comic guy, if you will. Seems fitting that maybe you kick this one off. Do us a favor, give us a brief setup of this film, what it is, what it's about, and your initial impressions. Is this something that you really enjoyed? Would you recommend people stay as far away from this as possible? Where did you come down?
Absolutely. So, this is Morbius, the new movie by the Sony verse part of Marvel, like you mentioned, Brad. This is the part where Venom lives. This is the part where Spider-Man lived before Disney got part of Spider-Man, and now they have like shared parental custody. So it sort of lives off in its own little pocket, separate from the MCU. So that's important to know, just in case you're wondering where the Avengers are in this movie. They don't exist. Okay. So the plot of this one is biochemist Michael Morbius tries to cure himself of a rare blood disease, but he inadvertently infects himself with a form of vampirism instead. That's right, Morbius, the living vampire based off of the Marvel comic books. This is a character who was really popular sort of in the especially in the 90s. Was in some pretty great runs, the Maximum Carnage Spider-Man run, which is one of the more famous Spider-Man comic books, as well as a few other kind of like horror adjacent superhero books of the time. This movie, I think it's hard to not be aware of just how much this movie is being subjected to a dog pile right now. I think I'll start with that. I think everyone thinks that this is the worst movie that they've ever seen. And I think there's a lot of people who are saying that who maybe haven't seen it yet. So I think that this movie is being unfairly dogpiled on. It's not a good movie. It is not a good movie. There's some things where this movie really struggles with. Lead performance by Jared Leto being one of them. This is not his worst performance. That would definitely be the Joker. But he has this affectation that he brings to his roles that comes across as like, I don't know, like when like a theater kid like is overacting on stage, try to like act to the back row, which doesn't translate as well to like melancholy or to nuance on screen. He just really lacks some sincerity sometimes, and this is one of those cases. This movie also, and we'll talk about why, has a just really shoddy ending which rushes through and kills any of the tension that it may have been building. There are some things that I liked about it. This feels like a throwback to sort of like that 90s like goth adjacent mid-budget horror action film that we saw a lot of. Think sort of like the first Underworld or things like that. There's definitely shades of some of that in there, and I kind of appreciated some of that when it really let itself drip with that almost like drip with the darkness of what it was going for. But I don't know, there just wasn't enough of that. This is going to be a skip for me, and I hate to say that because Morbius is a cool comic book character. I think a lot of people gravitated towards the Guardians of the Galaxy who they didn't know about after seeing that movie and were really excited to learn about that. I don't know that a lot of people are going to go tracking down Morbius comics because of this movie, and that kind of hurts my heart a little bit.
Unless they're maybe going after those comics to like get the good stuff.
There's
maybe,
which is fair. I think, all media should be judged of its own merits. So not all Michael Morbius comics and movies and cartoon appearances are created equally. So if you like the idea of this biochemist vampire who, is sort of a superhero because he only goes after the bad guys, but you didn't like this movie, that doesn't mean it's the end of this character. Just, dig a little deeper, see if there's something else you like.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for weighing in. Jim, how about for you? Where did this one fall on the scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the dog pile Will mentioned?
I'm not on the 0 to 10 scale. I'm on the 0 dicks to 5 dicks scale. That's where I am. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Tell us about this dick scale.
Wait.
That's for porn. That's for porn.
Pause. This is a different episode. I want to watch this episode instead.
But Will, I get where you're coming from, especially where you were working hard all day, right, on the exhibition floor, probably selling stuff. Not you're probably pitching stuff, right, that you're doing and services and stuff. And now we come in and ask you to pitch this movie, right? That's a tough spot to be in. Yeah. Probably tougher than anything you did today. But I agree with you. I think we're a lot closer on this movie than maybe I expected to be. I'm actually a little bit more positive on this movie than you are. I think you're right. I think this movie did get dog piled on. And before I saw the movie, I was one of those folks based on the trailer kind of dog piling on, like, oh my God, this movie looks bad. We've seen trailers come out before that are bad, but the movies end up being somewhere between okay and pretty darn good. I'm not going to say this is a good movie. I don't think it's a good movie, but I can tell you right now, I enjoyed watching this. Enjoyed might be a little exaggeration, but I kind of it was a more pleasant experience than I expected. Kind of watching this movie. Number one, it was short, and we'll get to that in a minute. Will, I agree with you. I think this movie suffers from some things that smell to me like studio fuckery a little bit, especially at the end. And the ending of this movie and the trailers, stingers, which we'll talk about in spoilers. I'm not going to talk about them here. But I actually did kind of enjoy. This is an origin story of a character that I didn't really know anything about from comics. The vampire thing, it's kind, the vampire or Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing thrown in there is kind of very worn territory. I was looking at the IMDb for this, and we joked around about Dracula Untold when we were talking about seeing this movie. The screenplay was written by the same dude. I'm just telling you right now.
That explains so fucking much.
Matt Sazama wrote the screenplay for Dracula Untold back from 2014. And so you can see a little bit of that going on. This guy obviously is into some dark vampire bat blood sucking shit, that's obviously his jam. And like I said, this movie was not bad. I actually don't think it deserves to be crapped all over, because I don't think it's that bad a movie. I think the same thing goes for me in terms of like Jared Leto, at least in this movie. Now, I saw House of Gucci. His character in House of Gucci was ridiculous. I'm not sure that's his fault, but you have to put some of it on him. In this movie, I thought he was fine. I thought he was fine as Dr. Michael Morbius, and, as a vampire, as a doctor, as a scientist. All that kind of worked for me. There's absolutely no humor in this movie, so don't look at that. This is a very straightforward. It reminded me of the old monster movies, right? The old, like a hardcore monster horror kind of movie. Definitely not a superhero. It didn't come across like a superhero movie to me. And as you guys know, that's kind of good, I think, as when it comes to me. So I'm going to say don't rush out to see this in theaters. I would say definitely would be worth a watch on streaming when it's out. Not a skip, but definitely I would see it on streaming. Who knows what platform it's going to be on, or when it's going to be on, but not one you have to rush out to see. But I would say for me, this is a mild recommend, but only if you don't have to go spend a lot of money to see it.
All right. Jim, thanks for giving your thoughts as well. The discussion around whether this is Jared Leto's worst performance has definitely been raging across the internet since this film came out. And Bill Zanowitz from the Comic Book Bears podcast is here. Hey, Bill, good to see you. Were your ears ringing? We were talking about you. We want you back for a non-comic book movie review with us soon. So we're going to be reaching out. Just know that.
Yes, we are.
We love Bill. He's amazing. He's wonderful. But Bill says, have to disagree. Leto's worst performance is in Alexander.
Gosh, it's, what's interesting is between Alexander, Joker, House of Gucci, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like a race to the bottom, right? Like, he even had, like, I would say I really like Blade Runner 2049, but he had the only performance in that movie I didn't like. So I don't know. Yeah, it's I think that you can pick almost any Jared Leto performance and make a good case for it being the worst, and that sucks because I don't want to dogpile the guy.
It's almost like I think the bigger the movie is, like the bigger the movie tries to be, the worst it reflects on his performance. Like, I loved him in Dallas Buyers Club, if you remember that. Like, I thought he was really good in that movie. And in this movie, I don't think I said it was, anywhere close to his worst performance, or probably his best, but certainly not something that deserves to be crapped on.
I loved him in Requiem for a Dream, which is a hard movie to watch, but it was a good role. He did that well.
Yeah.
You guys, Magic Mike Lovins is here. All of the friends of the show are apparently visiting tonight. We have more than 2 friends, I hope. But hey, Mike, he says, I want to come back too. Mike, we definitely need to get you back on the show soon. It's been a hot minute since your last time here. Of course, Mike is from the Real Gay Movie Show. Love that podcast. If you haven't listened to that show, definitely check it out, as well as the Comic Book Bears podcast, Bill C. and his crew. let me give some thoughts from me, I guess, before we go into spoilers, and I'll be brief because I want to save the majority of our time for spoilers. I see Jordy as a liquid, babe, trying to pour out of your hands as you move him from your desk.
Yeah, can't keep him off my desk these days. He's getting a little too big.
He doesn't realize that he's not like palm-sized anymore.
No,
He's
no,
like a full-size cat and still growing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so my thoughts. I agree with you. This is totally getting dogpiled on. I checked the Rotten Tomatoes score after we saw the movie because I didn't want to be influenced. It's a 16%, y'all. And I don't know that I see that. I'll be honest. I don't think this is a terrible movie. I was entertained by this movie. Do I think it's the best movie ever? No, I do not. But do I think it's the worst movie ever? No, I absolutely do not. I think this is maybe not quite as good as the Venom movies for me, but I mean, it's kind of approaching that a little bit. Tom Hardy is certainly prettier to look at than Jared Leto for me. These are the highbrow bars that I judge movies by, guys. But I thought that this movie tried to do some interesting things. I totally agree. While I was watching this movie, I'm like, oh, it's Dracula Untold again. What's that about? But my introduction to the Morbius character was in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon on Fox. And I really liked that character. Vampires have never really been my thing. But just the story of Morbius trying to, like, at least in the cartoon, I can't speak to the comics, he's trying to, like, cure what's happening to him, even though he is sort of an anti-hero, even though he is going after the bad guys. He doesn't want to be like that anymore. And it was interesting to see this character translated into a movie. I thought they did a good job with some of the CGI. The visuals were really great. Sound editing in this film was awesome. We saw this in DFX at our local Galaxy Theater. And man, when things are, blowing up, when glass is breaking, when people are falling and hitting things, like you hear it around you, and the mix was just really good. So I think there are some positives to this film, but I do agree that I was not a huge fan of the ending of this film. And the stingers especially kind of tweaked me a little bit. So we'll talk about those in spoilers. I was entertained, I guess, by Matt Smith as the villain in this movie. But it's so weird seeing the Doctor be a total asshole, But that's my fault for not letting go of Matt Smith being in Doctor Who. More than that is a fault of the movie. And I've seen a lot of people calling out Matt Smith as like the highlight of this film. So I don't know where you guys fall on that. But before we get to spoilers, let me just ask, what did you think of Matt Smith in this role?
I thought he was good. I think the character is, you say a villain, I think he's one of those, like, supposed to be one of those, like, semi-sympathetic villains. Certainly at the beginning of his story and at the end. We'll talk about it in spoilers. But yeah, I thought Matt Smith was good. I do kind of wish, besides Matt Smith, I do kind of wish that Adria Arona got a little bit more to do as Martine in this movie. It was kind of unfortunate the way her character was handled by the story, but yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Other performances in here. Jared Harris was in here, really good. If you guys seen Mad Men, Jared Harris and Tyrese Gibson from he's in the Fast and Furious movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was good to see him in here in more of a kind of a more serious, less slapstick kind of role.
Yeah.
I'll weigh in on Smith, but maybe on the other side of spoilers.
Okay.
All right. Sounds like a plan. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that specifically. But yeah, it's probably time for spoilers. So we're going to go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off, but slowly. to give you an opportunity to step away if you haven't seen Morbius yet, and you don't want to be spoiled. This is your time. If you are listening live, if you're watching the live broadcast, go ahead and come on back in about 15 minutes for plugs. You don't want to miss those. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, however you access your podcast, feel free to use the time index in the show notes to skip ahead as appropriate. But I'm done rambling, y'all. You had your chance. Spoilers for Morbius are fair game. Well, let's come back to you because I really am curious about your thoughts as Matt Smith as the villain. What did you think there?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing here is that, yes, I would say Matt Smith gave the strongest performance of this film. I don't know that it was necessarily like a capital G good performance. It was a perfectly fine, adequate performance, but it was the strongest performance. And I think there's something there. It is like the one thing that threw me off on it, and this has nothing to do with Matt Smith, unfortunately, but I think that his CGI was less good than Jared Leto's CGI when he went vampire mode. And whenever he went full vampire, it sort of like took me out of the movie because it looked a little like corny compared to like what Morbius had going. I did also think it was super interesting that this is now between Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, and Matt Smith. All three have now been cast as villains in Marvel properties. So they're channeling the because Eccleston was Malekith in Thor 2, and then David Tennant was the Purple Man in the Jessica Jones series. And now we've got Matt Smith here. So it looks like Marvel is just like churning through doctors, huh?
It does seem to be the case, for sure. And hey, Will D is in the chat with us. Hey, Will. He says Matt Smith knew the movie he was in. And yeah,
and
wonder what he
Capaldi,
means by that.
Granted, it wasn't a Marvel movie, but Capaldi was the villain in the newest Suicide Squad movie. So
yes, he was.
Doctors are villains. That's that's the takeaway.
That's a theme.
But
Babe, were you gonna respond to Will's comment?
Oh well, I just wanted to kind of him maybe later he'll elaborate on it a little bit more. I don't know. Oh, here he goes. He's Mike Lovin says he at least seemed to be having fun. Jared Leto seemed bored to me. I think that's part of. Well, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just going to say that I think Jared Leto's performance as Dr. Morbius was just trying to play like a more dour, kind of serious role, I guess. And it's a lot to me anyway. It seems a little bit easier for villains to kind of camp it up and kind of, put those acting chops to work and kind of, it's kind of a little bit more eye candy, I guess, to watch an actor go to work on a villain. Usually, I would say.
I think the other part of it too is, and I think this goes back to one of my problems with Jared Leto overall. I think Jared Leto as an actor is the type of guy who acts for big moments, which is perfectly fine if you're doing certain things. But I think that Matt Smith better understood the assignment in that you're not just playing a character for the moment, you're playing the character for the movie. And that means that you're having these little ebbs and flows in the performance that you make. And some of that is script based. Some of that is director based. It's not the actor's job to carry all of that on their shoulders themselves. But you think about the villain that, maybe it's not apples to apples, that not all, like villains versus heroes, but you compare Jared Leto's Joker versus Matt Smith's Milo here. And I think Matt Smith's Milo was able to play some of the range just a little bit more cleanly. I don't know.
We got a comment in the chat from Tony G. Hey, Tony, good to see you, handsome. He says, unpopular opinion, but I actually enjoyed Morbius more than either of the Venom films, runs and hides. Tony.
No need to hide.
No need to hide. Come on out of your hiding place. You're in a safe space with us, I promise. I mentioned earlier, this movie isn't quite at the Venom level of the films for me, but I'd say it's pretty close. Like, so I could totally see
Yeah.
maybe this tripping your trigger a little more, especially if you like vampire stuff. A lot of
Yeah.
people, guys, are really into the vampire stuff, so I could see it.
And not only that, this one actually felt like a monster movie, like a classic, almost like a classic vampire monster movie. Venom is a modern day superhero, supervillain, throw a bunch of quips in there, have some battles, and that's the kind of movie that is, right? So this is not. I see the movies as kind of totally different, and depending on how you vibe, what you vibe with, I could totally see liking the Morbius film than better than either of the Venom films. I think I'm kind of in that camp as well.
Yeah. I think for me, where I like the Venom movies a little bit better is, I'm not a big fan of any of them to begin with, but I think the Venom movies, they all feel a little messy to me, but at least like it's a more entertaining messiness, I guess, because like the Venom Eddie Brock, like will they won't they kind of like odd couple relationship thing
A
is at
banter.
least like not even the banter, but just like the like they're totally playing this as like a gay couple, right? Like
Yeah.
whether intentional or not, or however that lands, at least there's something there to again sink my teeth into. Here, there was just a little less of that. And I think the other thing that makes all of these a little rough for me is there's this like aesthetic to these films that it's hard to describe. It's sort of this like black and wet sort of look to it. Like every one of these movies looks like it's shot in an alleyway reflected in a puddle.
Desaturated.
If that makes sense. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes that works for some scenes, but like I don't remember a lot of scenes that didn't look like that in this movie. So I wasn't very like visually entertained by the way that the film looked and felt, if that makes sense,
Yeah. I think the visual aesthetic of a movie can go a long way toward how it's received by particular audience members, right? These desaturated movies that have like a giant blue cast or greenish cast, very dark. I think they do tend to subconsciously affect the mood and how you receive them film. It's definitely a choice by the creators, and it works for some people and probably doesn't work for others. Well, so
Yeah.
that's totally valid.
Hey guys, can we talk about the stingers? Is it too early for that?
Yeah. God, let's talk about the stinger.
Okay, I'm really confused about something.
Yeah.
So I know that there's this whole shared like Sony Marvel relationship collaboration thing. Am I reading this correctly? So at the end of the movie, in the first stinger, Michael Keaton appears in a jail cell.
That's
Cell.
apparently
Jail
that's the
cell,
way we
yeah.
do stingers now. We have to show a
Right.
character in jail. That's
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's been 4 movies that have done that.
So he appears as Adrian Toomes from Spider-Man Homecoming,
Right.
in a jail cell, and they let him out because apparently they don't know why he's there or whatever. And in the second stinger, he has somehow rebuilt his Vulture suit from Spider-Man Homecoming and appears to Jared Leto's Morbius, and he's like, "We should team up, blah, 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 blah."
Let's go get
And he
Spider-Man.
mentions Spider-Man, but I didn't think Spider-Man existed in this universe.
I can answer that because there's another line that they slipped in right before. First of all, we saw the Sky doing weird shit. So think back to the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, where like all of the people were kind of like, like Brock was shuffled back over, and all these people were shuffled into the main MCU and then back to their own like Spider-Verse things. Well, we see the Sky doing that shit, and then Adrian Toomes is in a prison cell that was previously unoccupied, and he was released because he was just this random man that appeared in this unoccupied cell. So what this is meant to believe is that this is the Spider-Man from the Homecoming universe who, because of the Doctor Strange weird shit in No Way Home, appeared randomly now in the Venom Morbius verse, and because he wasn't arrested in this world, they had to release him because so he rebuilt the Venom thing.
That I get, but why didn't he get zapped back to his universe the same way that Venom got zapped back to his universe in the whole Stinger things that were happening?
Oh, yeah, because they didn't want him to. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because he
I mean,
didn't, Brad.
because yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not good. It's not good. It's because they're setting.
Yeah.
I mean, what they're doing is they're setting up a Sinister Six-ish type thing. They want to sort of set up like some sort of like villain group going after Spider-Man on the Sony side of things.
But Spider-Man doesn't exist in the Sony universe from what we've seen, right? Like
That's
Venom didn't
that's
know who Spider-Man
Venom
was.
doesn't know who he is, and Morbius doesn't know who he is. So maybe we're gonna find a Spider-Man that does exist in this world, cast by another person, or I don't know what they're gonna do. To be honest,
Ay, ay, ay,
it's
ay,
weird
ay.
and it's not great and it's muddy. And the thing that's worse for me is like, okay, a stinger. I don't have a problem when a stinger sets up another thing because it's a bonus at the end of the movie. Credits have already rolled. It doesn't matter because it doesn't affect the story, except for when it does. And here it did affect the story because we've got a Morbius who, going through the end of this movie, his final kind of like story arc was, I'm going to take out Milo with one of these, and then I'm going to kill myself too. Like, that's a line that he specifically says. And then at the end of the movie, because we're in spoilers, he takes out Milo, and then he's like, okay, bye, and zips off. And the whole thing about like, and I also have to kill myself too, goes out the window. Not to say that he had to go through with it, but there was no like real explanation.
No
for
coming to
his
terms with it.
there.
Right.
No
Right.
coming to terms with it. And so, and then now he's randomly in this field just to be like, you're also a bad guy. I want to recruit you to my team to take out Spider-Man. There was nothing that got Morbius from where he was to that stinger scene, except for they wanted to set that stinger scene up. So that was really frustrating for me. That was definitely they put the cart way before the horse there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad
And-
it's not just me then.
And
it's
I'm not sure I completely understand, all the universe, like what belongs in what universe and whatever. I really don't. So the first stinger was fine. It was what I normally expect at the end of these movies. They're setting something up for the next movie. Okay, great. But then it goes from something that's bad to something that's extremely awful. That second trailer, I don't know what the purpose of it was. I mean, the second stinger, sorry. What was the purpose of that the first stinger did not do? Like, we know the guy's there. We know he gets released. We know Morbius is, I mean, 2 and 2 together, it's better that way than they had to grab you by the face, right? And some studio exec, that stinger smacks of like a studio said, oh, we got to put this in. You got to have a scene where Morbius acknowledges this Michael Keaton dude in his whatever costume, and he has to say the words, "We're gonna team up and we're gonna go against Spider-Man." How on the nose and ridiculous is that? Like, isn't that what they said?
Yeah. And
I want you to team up and we're gonna go get Spider-Man.
This gets even murkier. I was just reading about this just now while you guys were talking. So I didn't realize this, but apparently in one of the Morbius trailers, in the background of the subway tunnel, there's a sign with Spider-Man on it, and it says "Kill Spider-Man" or something on it.
Missed it.
And that never appeared in the movie. And I was just reading that the director decided to take that out, but that marketing, because they get to just put whatever they want in, put that in. So it seems like when they made the movie, Spider-Man did exist, but then the director afterward decided to remove the connection? Or did the studio? I don't know.
A thing to also remember here is that Morbius this is a film that was supposed to be released like 2 years ago and was in production well before that, So I think they were still figuring out what the Sony side of things was going to look like in the aftermath of like, okay, well, the Garfield Spider-Man movies aren't really happening because now it's Tom Holland doing stuff. So I think they were starting to rebuild stuff and trying to build like a more of a linked lore there before they had to like stop and adjust some things. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. And you're right, Jim. You mentioned something like What does the second stinger do that the first one doesn't? And it muddies things, because really, if the stinger had just been Adrian Toomes, the Michael Keaton character, was in one dimension, but now he's in this dimension, and it kind of does like that cut of him getting in the car, and you're like, oh, some shit's gonna happen. That's enough to keep me interested. Oh, what's it like if you're a guy who did a bunch of terrible crimes, but is now in a spot where you didn't exist, so you can start over and without any of that weight, like, and maybe be an even worse guy, or whatever. But that's interesting to me. But then it's immediately like, gotta get that Spider-Man, and I don't know. It just it sucked the wind out of that.
And it's almost like, you know what? I think the fanboys are gonna wank off if we show what's his name in his flying costume or whatever the fuck it was. What's his name? The character?
Vulture.
Vulture. Like they had to get, and they couldn't show it in the jail cell, but we could show it in another stinger if we just put another one in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It felt really bad and clunky.
If I were making this film, which I'm not, but if I were making this film, that there would only be the one stinger, and you could still get your fanboy moment if like Adrian Toomes appears. He's taken, the last shot of him is maybe instead of him like getting in the car, it's like him getting a drive home, and he says, "Actually, stop right here," and it's like a junkyard type thing or something like that, where he picks up a piece of scrap and he says, "I'm going to be a while," or something like that. Oh, he's up to no good again. Like that would be fun, and that would be exciting, and that would like tease me. They didn't do that. I don't know. It's just a fucking stinger. It kind of doesn't matter, but at the same time, like, if it takes some of the appeal away from a movie, I guess it does matter. So they decided to put it on screen. So
the last stinger kind of made me mad, but and it had nothing to do with story reasons. It was more like you insulted my intelligence by putting that in there.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the end of the movie seemed very abrupt. Like, they're going along. There's the big climactic fight scene between Lucian and Morbius at the end, and he injects him with the stuff, and he flies off, and then boom, we're into the credits sequence.
You missed something.
Did I? What?
A shot of Morbius's friend becoming a vampire.
Her eyes open.
Yeah,
we do have that shot of her eyes open.
Yeah, which I had to have explained to me how vampires work, because
what if that was the second stinger?
Yeah,
that could have been
it just shows her laying on the rooftop and then just her eyes open.
Now that happened, I think, because a drop of blood fell from his mouth into hers, and we saw her like lick it up. She's like, so one drop of blood from Morbius can apparently turn people into vampires. So he better not fucking bleed around any of his enemies.
That's scary, right?
Yeah.
That had to be explained to me, because I couldn't figure out why she turned into a vampire and nobody else that died did, so I don't know.
Well, like, how much did we see blood dripping from their maws while they were fighting people? Like, how many other fucking vampires are out there? Like, that group of guys that Matt Smith took out, maybe they're all vampires too now.
Or
so maybe this really is the beginning of like Underworld or something like that.
Maybe.
Oh geez. Well, guys,
did you love those 80s Windows screensaver credit graphics at the end?
Totally did. They were at the beginning too, and I'm just like, wow, did my monitor go to sleep? What's going on?
It was fun. It's fun to kind of dunk on this one a little bit.
They ran out of money. They ran out of money on that one.
It's fun to dunk on this one because it's silly, and like it's sort of it's a harmless dunk, right? But at the same time, like, I don't know, it just temper it with the fact that, again, I think that there's some bad faith criticism that's happening out there right now. This is a movie, again, I say this is the standpoint of someone who did not like this movie, and I think there are some people who are maybe dunking on it for unfair reasons. So,
well, at least you saw it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I did, and I've literally seen reviews on this one that's like, I haven't seen this. This looks awful. Half a star. It's like I would rather someone watch this and say, I legitimately watched this movie and it was the best movie I ever saw. 5 stars. I would rather someone give me that review that I completely disagree with than a half star I didn't watch it review, because at least the former is someone who is going to bat for something they actually believe in.
Here's my tagline: Morbius, slightly better than the trailer.
That's a good one. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and move on to some plugs. These are things we are excited to talk about and put on your radar, things that we love and hope you will love too. Jim, why don't you kick us off this week? What have you got to plug?
I'm going to actually plug a little mini series that I watched, or series. I watched the first season of a series. It's on HBO, and I'll just say 2 words: gay pirates. This one is called Our Flag Means Death. And this is a series on, as I said, on HBO Max. I'll just read the IMDb. The year is 1717. Wealthy landowner Stede Bonnet has a midlife crisis, decides to blow up his cushy life with a wife and family back home to become a pirate on the seas. It does not go well, based on a true story. Yeah, this one is fun. This one has Taika Waititi behind it. He did direct one of the episodes. Rhys Darby, if you're a fan of, Flight of the Conchords, several other properties he's been in. This is a comedy, but it's a comedy with a real story. With a think of like What We Do in the Shadows, right, Will? Something like that, like a comedy, kind of very dry humor. I would, but I did kind of like the story. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm just going to say Blackbeard appears in this, and that's kind of cool. The pirates are cool. We have Christian Nairn, right?
Yes.
Our bear friend who was in Game of Thrones appears in
Big
this
fans.
as one of the pirates. If you have HBO Max, check this series out. It's a lot of fun. It's only like 25 minutes per episode, and there's only like 9 episodes, I think, something like that. So you could easily binge it over a weekend without spending too much time on it. It's called Our Flag Means Death, and I found it to be great. I really loved it.
So I think I only saw like 3.5 episodes of this with you, because
Right.
I would just kind of come in the middle of one, and then we'd watch another, and then I would drift away and then come back. But you thought I'd have to suffer through it, but I actually kind of dug it, Jim.
Well, right. It's with comedy. I don't always like approach you, but
yeah.
If you caught some of it and want to see it, I'd gladly watch it again with you if you want.
Yeah, part of me wants to go back and start from the beginning, because I kind of dug what I saw, and some of the comedy worked on me, which is rare. I'm not really a big comedy guy, unless it's Lost City of D. That movie was so funny. Anyway,
Lost City, the Lost City,
the Lost City.
How gay are these pirates?
They're pretty gay.
They're somewhat gay, and from somewhat gay to very gay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
Let's just say there's lots of.
Oh, go ahead,
Brad. I don't want to spoil anything. Go ahead, Brad. Were you going to say?
Let's just say there's lots of booty plundering.
Okay. Right.
There's a lot of gay subtext and also some regular text.
And also unrelated to all of this, but also super related. I'm going to send you guys a song after this, Jim. I know we talked about during South by Southwest the actor Cosmo Jarvis. He's also a musician, and he has a song called "Gay Pirates." That's one of my favorite, one of my favorite kind of silly songs. Cool. So I'll send that your way.
Cool, nice. Cool. I definitely want to hear it.
All right. Well, babe, thanks so much for your plug. Will, what's yours?
Yeah, so technically a South by Southwest tie-in. This was one of the headliner films that played at the festival. It is Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood, which is the new movie by Richard Linklater. This is on Netflix, so you can just watch this now. It is animated in the same style as like if you saw like when he did A Scanner Darkly, you know, kind of like that, like
Waking Life.
rotoscopy kind of Waking Life, you know, kind of that style of film. And this is basically about this man is narrating what his life was like back when he was like 10 years old, like in living in Houston in the late 60s, you know, so near, you know, Space Center Houston, you know, living near where like just the space race was happening, like right outside of his window, watching as like basically everyone in his community like worked for NASA in some capacity or not. And it weaves the story of like what it was like for him being a kid there. Think sort of like A Christmas Story when like the narrator's talking about like this was a thing that we liked doing back then. Only Jack Black's the narrator, but also it weaves in this the kid's memory also becomes sort of like weaves into this fantastical story about his own trip as the first like child astronaut to go to the moon. It's super delightful. I've talked about before. One of the things that sometimes frustrates me in kind of like modern film, whatever, is that there's like this weaponization of nostalgia. That like this was popular before, therefore we're going to shove it in your mouth. This is the opposite of that. This is like a gentle hug of nostalgia that tells us how nostalgia can be interesting because it creates these formative experiences that shape who we are today. I like this movie a lot. Richard Linklater, surprise, surprise, is a good filmmaker. It's just super good. Jack Black as the narrator here, you can definitely tell it's his voice, but he doesn't do as many of those. Like he has this like Jack Black uses this like jokey voice a lot of times when he's talking, and he doesn't really slip into that. This is a more serious role from Jack Black. So that's now two like times that, or maybe three. You know, he's worked very well with Richard Linklater in the past. Think like
Bernie,
like Bernie. You know,
yeah.
This is something where you know I like the two of them partnering together. So anyway, it's Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood. It's on Netflix, and there's a lot of shit that got dumped on Netflix this week, but this is not one of them. Check it out.
Yeah, well, I did catch that one because that was one of the ones from South by Southwest, by the way. It was one of the headliners at South by Southwest that we did not get to see because we weren't there. I tried for a screener. I didn't get a screener, but I knew it was coming out on Netflix. And so when it popped on there, I watched it. And I got to tell you, you know, growing up, probably being the same age basically as the lead character in this movie, growing up in the 60s through the space race, even though I didn't live in Houston, a lot of those things really hit home. And yeah, you're right. It was, as Brad said, it was like an endless stream of member berries.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? But in a good way. But in a good way. Like,
yeah.
I just the way, you know, it was presented was in a very kind of loving hug way, like you presented, Will. And yeah, I really like this one. A weird mashup of ideas, but it worked for me.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for plugging your plug in the plug
10.5
that plugs.
Wait, Jim, did you say plug 10.5?
Apollo 10.5 is what.
Oh, I thought you said plug 10.5, and I'm just like, excuse you.
Yeah. Now
I've plugged
work
10.5.
Work it.
Anyway. All right. My plug for this week. The Star Wars movies, love them, hate them, love some of them, hate some of them. Cannot deny they are a huge part of filmmaking over the last, 50 years, 60 years, whatever it's been. I am very excited by a video game that just came out today that celebrates those 9 Star Wars films. That is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. So you basically start at episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and you can play all the way through episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And it's all done with lovable Lego game twist. I don't know if you've ever played any of the Lego games. They're very popular.
I played a little bit of like the Marvel one, and actually there was I think there was another Star Warsy one before, but it was just like, I don't know. But like there was one, but it was like, it wasn't like the whole of.
Yeah. I've played some of the Star Wars Lego games previously, and
Right.
none of them were voice acted for one
Right.
thing. So
Oh, yeah. Okay.
the characters are just like, woo? And that's funny, but like I don't know, it wasn't quite my jam. Plus, the older games had this weird like zoomed out thing, and it was really busy on the screen and messy and hard to follow what was going
Yeah.
on. Anyway, the new game gives you sort of this over the shoulder view. You're kind of zoomed
Oh,
in with
wow.
the character now. And it's fucking awesome. I wish every Lego game I've played has been like this. I played this for a couple hours today, booted it up, and just had a smile slapped across my face for 2 hours straight while I was going through. It's got jokes. It has a very Spaceballs sense of humor to the way that it does some things. I don't want to spoil folks, but like disco dancing stormtroopers. I'll just say that. It's a lot of fun. The graphic fidelity is simply incredible. I'm playing on PS5. It's released for multiple platforms, but it looks incredible on pretty much every platform that it's out for. So if you love the Star Wars movies and you like video games and you like fun, who doesn't like fun? Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga is the goods. It's a blast.
I just to sort of see this over the camera look, and I guess this isn't a spoiler because it's like literally just a thing that happened in one of the Star Wars movies. I just picked a random spot. Someone had uploaded like a full gameplay, and I just happened to click like a boss fight with General Grievous, and it looks cool. It looks cool. So yeah, that's
all
awesome,
over social media today. People, gamers.
Yeah, a lot of people super excited about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
It's got the iconic music, it's sound effects, it's amazing. So check it out. Do it. You won't regret it. Well, fellas, I do believe that brings us close to the end of our show. We've had some questions on what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. Next week, Will, what are we tackling?
A24 has a film out called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which is a big
sounds
topic.
like a lot. It sounds like a lot, Will. It sounds like a lot.
You know what? It does sound like a lot of episodes. So I don't know. We may have to see if we pull in a ringer or something.
Can we fit it all? Can we fit everything everywhere all at once in our episode?
I think we need to make it every bear.
Every bear, everywhere,
everything,
all
everywhere. Yeah,
absolutely. We need to get some help. So we may have a guest star or two to help us review this movie next week.
Every twink, everywhere, bear all at once.
We've also had some questions about whether we are going to be reviewing Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. We have decided, based on all of the crazy transphobic things that author J.K. Rowling has said, that we're not going to review it on the show.
Yeah.
Sorry if that disappoints anybody, but it's just we don't want to support that. So instead, we're going to be doing Sonic 2 the week following next week instead of Secrets of Dumbledore. And it kills me to do that because I love the Harry Potter universe and like I want to know more about Dumbledore, and that could be a great discussion, but just no, can't.
It went to shit when they got rid of Johnny Depp. Let's face it.
And look, if everyone has to make these decisions for themselves, right? So that's not a judgment call of us on you if you decide to go see it or what have you. I mean, depending on how I've got my Alamo season pass where I get a couple of free tickets every day if I want to use them. It may squeeze into my schedule if I've got a gap or whatever, right? But I think the point that we've really been talking about off air is that we've got a platform here, and it's not a huge one, but it's one that we still cherish, and we could use it to support any number of films. So let's support ones that are more in line with our LGBTQ, brethren,
community,
family,
Absolutely. So there you go. That's our plans for the next couple weeks. We hope y'all will join us for the loads of fun that we are going to be having. A big thank you to everybody who jumped into the live stream. It's interesting. We had almost as many people for the Morbius show as we did for the last Avengers movie hanging out with us. A lot of comments in the chat. We didn't get to read all of them, but thanks so much for being part of the conversation. If you're listening through digital tape delay and you're like, oh man, I didn't get to be in the live chat, that's okay. Jump into the comment section. drop us a message on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter at MB Podcast. We definitely want to hear from you. Speaking of hearing from you, last thing we're going to do before we wrap this mofo up, Jim, if people want to chat between now and our next episode, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter. That's where all my movie hot takes are, at JJP Out West. I try not to be too controversial there. I know Twitter and avoiding controversy. That's like, I don't know how I handle it, but you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. I'm a friendly guy. I'll talk to just about anybody.
Mhm.
All right. And Will, how about for you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. Letterboxd, I review and rank films there. Search for William Lindis. Give me a follow. I'll follow you back. And I'm still doing TikToks. I'm at the Movie Bear. A lot of places to find me, so come say hi.
All right, excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm the Brad Harris that likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. Don't be shy. Feel free to say hello. Send me a message, though, before you add me. Let me know that you're coming from the podcast and you're not a very clever bot from another country that's trying to get my credit card information. Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Brad Pro. It's been a treat hanging out with all of you. Thank you so much for your support of the show. We love you, and we will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.